You know, for almost 100 years, there's been this one book, Think and Grow Rich, that people pass around like it's the secret manual for success. But what's so special about it? Well, Napoleon Hill didn't just write a bunch of rules. He built a whole philosophy around real, powerful stories. So let's dive into the core stories that launched this whole idea.
Right here, this is the heart of the entire book. I mean, think about that claim for a second. That your thoughts, when you focus them just right, can actually change your reality. Now, this isn't about just wishing for something. It's about a very specific, intense, all-in kind of desire. And Hill has two incredible stories to prove it.
So our first story is about a guy named Edwin C. Barnes, and his story is the perfect example of how a single thought with enough force behind it can smash through any obstacle. He had one, and only one, crystal clear goal: to go into business with the great Thomas Edison.
Now, what's so wild about this is that on paper, Barnes had absolutely nothing going for him. I mean, zero. He had no money. He literally had to hop a freight train to get there. He didn't know a soul. He didn't know Edison. By all logical accounts, he should have been turned right away at the door.
But Edison saw something else. It wasn't in his clothes. It wasn't on a resume. It was in his eyes. Edison said he could see the look of a man who had already decided he was going to succeed no matter what it took. He saw a mind that had already burned the bridges behind it.
So, did he get the partnership on day one? Not a chance. For 5 long years, he did menial work around the lab, just waiting. Most people would have given up after a month, right? But Barnes held on, totally fueled by that one single desire, just knowing his moment was going to come.
And here's where it gets really interesting. Opportunity. It almost never looks like you expect it to. To everybody else, this new machine was a total flop. Even Edison's own salesman didn't want to touch it. But Barnes, who had been laser-focused for 5 years, saw his opening where nobody else did.
He walked up to Edison and said, "I can sell that machine," and boy did he. He sold it so successfully that he landed a nationwide contract. Barnes literally thought his way into a partnership and a fortune. He proved that a definite desire, when you back it up with persistence, is pretty much unstoppable.
Okay, so that's the what. We see it worked for Barnes, but how did Napoleon Hill even figure this principle out in the first place? Well, that brings us to the origin story of the book itself, which all started with a challenge from one of the richest men who ever lived.
So you've got this young journalist, Napoleon Hill, who manages to land an interview with the one and only Andrew Carnegie. And during that interview, Carnegie saw something in Hill and just kind of threw this life-changing idea at him, a challenge that would end up defining his entire career. And the proposal was just massive. Carnegie basically said, "I want you to spend the next 2 decades, unpaid by the way, interviewing the most successful people in America. We're talking Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, John D. Rockefeller, all of them. And your job is to figure out what they all have in common and boil it down into one simple philosophy." And the secret he found? It was the exact same thing that was driving Edwin Barnes.
And this is the absolute core of it, a burning desire. It's not just wanting something. A hope is passive. A wish is lazy. A burning desire is an active, all-consuming obsession. It's definite. You know exactly what it is, and you're willing to bet everything you have to get it.
And Hill doesn't just leave it there. He gives us a practical 6-step formula to make it happen. This isn't some abstract idea. It's a concrete plan. And notice the key word here: definite. An exact amount of money, a definite date, a definite plan. This is how you take a vague dream and turn it into a real, tangible target.
All right, so we've seen what happens when you get it right. But to really drive the point home, Hill gives us the perfect cautionary tale. He shows us exactly what happens when you're staring success right in the face, but you just don't have the persistence to see it through.
This is the legendary story of 3 feet from gold. So, picture it. The gold rush is on. R.U. Darby and his uncle head out west, stake a claim, start digging, and almost right away, boom, they hit a massive vein of gold ore. They've struck it rich.
I mean, the excitement must have been off the charts. They take a sample to the smelter, and it's confirmed. This is one of the richest mines in all of Colorado. So they go all in. They pool their money, borrow from family, and buy all this heavy-duty machinery. They are on the verge of an absolute fortune. And then, it just stops. The vein of gold is gone. It disappears. They keep drilling, going deeper and deeper, trying to find it again, but nothing. And eventually, frustrated and completely defeated, they make the one decision they'll regret forever. They quit.
They sell all their expensive equipment for just a few $100 to a local junk man, and they head home, tails between their legs. But the junk man did something the Darbys didn't think to do. Before he did anything else, he hired a mining engineer to come take a look. He sought out expert advice.
And what that engineer found was just staggering. He discovered that because of a geological fault line, the vein hadn't disappeared, it had just shifted. And the gold? The millions of dollars in gold was sitting just 3 feet from where the Darbys had stopped drilling.
The lesson here is just so powerful. First, what looks like failure is often just temporary defeat. But second, and this is crucial, persistence is so much easier when you get the right advice before you throw in the towel. That junk man became a multimillionaire from the exact same mine.
So let's put these two stories side by side. On one hand, you've got Barnes, who started with nothing but a thought and won big. On the other hand, you have Darby, who started with a literal gold mine and lost it all. The difference between them? That's the master key to everything.
So, what have we really learned here? Well, Barnes proves that every great achievement starts as a thought, a burning desire. And Darby's story shows us that failure is usually just temporary defeat in disguise. It's a signal to push harder, not to quit. Persistence, that's the bridge that connects your dream to your reality. And so often, the biggest wins are waiting for you just one step past the point where you feel like giving up.
When you boil it all down, this is the core thesis of Think and Grow Rich. The universe, destiny, whatever you want to call it, it doesn't really care about your wishes. It responds to the powerful signal of a definite desire, put into motion with a definite plan, and carried forward with persistence that just refuses to quit.
And that leaves us with this final, powerful question from Hill himself. Think of it. You're in a game. Your opponent is time, and time doesn't wait for anyone. If you hesitate, you lose. So now that you know the principles, the question is, what's your next move going to be?
What if I told you that a single idea, shared over a dinner, could literally create a billion-dollar company? I mean, that sounds like a movie plot, right? But it's not. It actually happened. Today, we're diving into that exact story from Napoleon Hill's classic, Think and Grow Rich, to figure out how a simple, intangible thought can turn into a massive fortune. So picture this, it's the year 1900. You're at a private dinner in New York City. The room is packed with the richest, most powerful man on the planet. And yet, almost none of them, not even half a dozen, had a clue they were about to be part of a moment that would completely reshape American history. It was so under the radar, it wasn't even in the papers, but wow, the impact was absolutely seismic. And that really brings us to the big question, doesn't it? What on earth could someone say in one speech to make that happen? I mean, how can just words spoken over dinner lead to one of the biggest corporate deals ever conceived? That's the secret we're going to unpack right now. Okay, so here's the scene. We're at New York's super exclusive university club. The guest of honor is a 38-year-old steel guy named Charles M. Schwab. And sitting in the audience, you've got titans of industry, including the man himself, J.P. Morgan. Now, Schwab was told, hey, keep it short, be polite, don't bore these financial giants. He did not do that, not at all. For a full 90 minutes, Schwab had that entire room hanging on his every word. He wasn't just giving a speech, he was painting a picture of the future, a vision so powerful, so compelling, that it completely captivated J.P. Morgan and led directly to the creation of the United States Steel Corporation. The price tag on that one idea? $600 million. I mean, that's a number that's hard to even comprehend back at the turn of the century. So how in the world did he pull that off? Well, this story is the perfect example of the very first and maybe the most important principle from Hill's book, The Incredible Power of a Single Idea. Think about it. Before there were any steel mills, before the money changed hands, before anything real existed, there was just a thought, a simple, intangible impulse inside Schwab's head. And this right here, this is the heart of the whole book. Riches, real earned riches, they don't start with a pile of cash. They start with an idea. What Schwab did wasn't just luck. It was a process, a repeatable formula for taking a thought and turning it into something tangible and, massively valuable. Okay, but let's be real. Not every idea is a billion-dollar idea, right? So what was so special about Schwab's? To get that, we need to basically perform an autopsy on his idea. Look at the powerful ingredients he mixed together. And the foundation, the very first ingredient, is knowledge. Now, Hill makes a really important distinction here. He's not talking about general knowledge, being great at trivia night. He's talking about specialized knowledge, knowing your industry, your craft inside and out. But here's the catch. He says even that, by itself, is only potential power. It doesn't become actual power until you organize it and aim it at a very specific goal. Henry Ford said it best. When he was on trial and someone tried to call him ignorant, he basically said, "Why would I clog my brain with a million facts when I can just push a button and summon an expert who has the answer?" That's real education, knowing where to find the knowledge you need. Schwab lived this. He knew more about making and selling steel than just about anyone. That was his specialized knowledge. But knowledge is just ingredient number one. Schwab combined it with the second piece of the puzzle, imagination. Hill says there are really two kinds of imagination. First, there's what he calls synthetic imagination. This is like being a DJ. You take old ideas, old concepts, and you mix them together into a new combination. Then you have creative imagination. This is where those hunches, those flashes of genius come from. It creates something totally new. Schwab used both brilliantly. And this is where his genius just explodes. See, at the time, all the big industrialists were thinking about forming monopolies to control supply and jack up prices. Schwab's imagination saw the complete opposite. He said, no, if we all combine, we can make steel so efficiently that we can dramatically lower the cost. This, he argued, would create a massive, ever-expanding global market. People would find new uses for steel, and they'd dominate world trade. It was a vision of growth, not of limitation. All right, so Schwab's got the big idea. It's fueled by his deep knowledge, and it's shaped by his incredible imagination. But right now, it's still just a thought floating in his head. The third, and absolutely critical piece, is turning that vision into a real organized plan. And for that, he couldn't do it alone. Hill calls this next principle the mastermind. It's this core idea that no great fortune, no huge achievement is ever done by one person. It takes a team. It's about coordinating the knowledge and the effort of a group of people who are all working in harmony toward one specific purpose. This is the engine that actually makes the plan go. So how do you actually build one of these mastermind groups? Well, Hill gives us 4 simple rules. First, you have to ally with the right people, the ones you actually need to execute the plan. Second, you have to figure out what's in it for them. How will they benefit? It has to be a win-win. Third, meet all the time, at least twice a week until the plan is perfect. And last, and this is the one that can break everything, you have to maintain perfect harmony in the group. Without that, the whole thing falls apart. And wouldn't you know it, this is exactly what happened next. That speech was just the beginning. Right away, Schwab formed a mastermind with JP Morgan. A week later, they're in Morgan's library hammering out the details. Then came the biggest hurdle of all. Schwab had to go convince his own boss, the legendary and notoriously tough Andrew Carnegie, to sell his entire empire. I mean, the numbers involved here are they're wild. Schwab laid out his valuation, Carnegie listened, and then just jotted his asking price on a piece of paper, $400 million. And for just putting the deal together, the Morgan syndicate walked away with over $60 million. These are figures that were almost science fiction back then. But if you really want to understand the scale of this thing, this one little exchange says it all. After it was all done, Carnegie told Morgan, I wish I had asked you for another $100 million. And Morgan's reply was instant. If you had asked for it, you would have gotten it. That just shows you the insane power of a perfectly formed idea backed by a solid plan. And just like that, a new industrial giant was born. And Charles Schwab, the guy who started out as Andrew Carnegie's right-hand man, became the first president of the largest corporation the world had ever seen. He was living proof in the most dramatic way possible that a person really can think their way to riches. It's an amazing story for sure. But here's the thing. What does it mean for you and me? Napoleon Hill's whole point is that this isn't just some dusty old anecdote from a history book. It's a blueprint. It's a formula that anyone, and that means anyone, can follow. So here it is, the whole blueprint that Schwab used, broken down. It all starts with that intangible spark, an idea. Then you pour fuel on that fire with specialized knowledge, knowing your stuff. Next, you use your imagination to shape that idea into a one-of-a-kind vision. And finally, you bring it into the real world with an organized plan, powered by your own mastermind group. The entire United States steel empire, all of it, started as nothing more than an idea in one person's head. The principles that made it real are just as powerful today as they were in 1900. So the final question here isn't about Charles Schwab. It's about you. What great idea is sitting there, right now, waiting in your workshop of the mind? And what are you going to build with it?
All right, we've been on this journey through Think and Grow Rich, and now we're at the finish line. This is where we get to the real heavy hitters, the final, most powerful principles that Napoleon Hill laid out. We're talking about the steps that actually bridge the gap between a big dream and something real, something you can actually touch. So, let's get into it.
I mean, just let that sink in for a second. Everything starts as an idea. Think about it. The phone in your hand, the biggest companies in the world, before any of that was a physical thing, it was just a spark in someone's imagination. That's why Hill hammers this point home. Your mind, your ability to think, is your single greatest asset. It's the soil where every great achievement is planted.
And remember where all this comes from. We're pulling straight from the 1937 classic. Now, the thing is, Napoleon Hill wasn't just some philosopher sitting in an armchair. No way. This guy spent 2 decades, 20 years, studying the minds of giants like Henry Ford and Thomas Edison. So what we're looking at here isn't just a bunch of nice ideas. It's a practical blueprint reverse-engineered from the people who actually did it. Okay, so you have the idea, the spark. Now what? How do you actually get the ball rolling? Well, according to Hill, it all starts with something that sounds super simple, but is actually incredibly powerful. It's the power of decision. A definite decision. This is your starting point. And just look at the difference here. Hill found this massive divide between people who made it and people who didn't. The winners, they decide quickly, and they commit. They don't look back. The ones who struggle, they're always on the fence, hemming and hawing, second-guessing themselves into paralysis. That's why he calls indecision the seedling of fear. It's where fear starts to grow. But making a real, solid decision, man, that's like hitting the gas pedal on your ambitions. And this is what happens when you make that decision. I love this quote because it's so true, right? When you have that conviction, when you know exactly where you're headed, people feel it. It's not about being loud or pushy. It's this quiet confidence that just makes things happen. The world kind of clears a path for you because it respects that you have a destination.
So, making a decision is like firing the starting gun. Fantastic. But the race itself, that's a whole different beast. The race is won with persistence. This is the grit that keeps you moving when the excitement wears off, when you're tired, and all you can see is one obstacle after another. And Hill is absolutely emphatic about this. There is no substitute for persistence. None. You could have the most brilliant idea in history, a perfect plan, and it will all fall apart at the first sign of trouble if you don't have that stick-to-itiveness. It's that raw, stubborn refusal to quit, no matter what.
I think this is such a powerful way to think about it. He compares it to waking up from a nightmare. You know that feeling? You're paralyzed and you have to fight with everything you've got just to move a finger, then your hand, then your arm. That's persistence. It's not one giant heroic act. It's the step-by-step, muscle-by-muscle fight of your willpower until you break free. You win.
Okay, so we've got our internal game straight. Decision and persistence. But Hill makes it very clear. You can't climb Mount Everest alone. The biggest successes are almost always a team sport. And this is where we get into one of his most famous concepts, the mastermind.
Now, this isn't just about teamwork in the usual sense. Hill saw it as something much deeper, almost like mental chemistry. The idea is that when you get 2 or more people together who are in total sync, working towards the same goal, they create this incredible third mind. It's a pool of energy and ideas that's way more powerful than what any one person could come up with on their own. It's a force multiplier for your brain.
So how do you actually build one of these? Well, he gives us the roadmap. First, find the right people for your plan. Then, be crystal clear on what's in it for them. It has to be a win-win. Meet regularly, at least twice a week, to keep that momentum going. And this last one is the deal breaker. You must maintain perfect harmony. The second there's conflict or ego getting in the way, that special connection, that third mind, poof, it's gone. All right, buckle up, because now we're getting into what is probably the most radical and maybe most powerful idea in the entire book. Hill argued that our single strongest human drive, you know the one, could be redirected. He called it the mystery of sex transmutation, the art of channeling that raw, primal energy into fuel for creative genius. The key word here is transmute. It just means to change something from one form into another. So this is not about suppression or denial, not at all. It's about taking that powerful energy and upgrading it. Think of it like raw electricity. You can just let it short circuit, or you can run it through a wire to light up a whole city. Same energy,
different application. So you've got this choice. You can let that energy out in its most common, physical form, or you can redirect it. And when you channel it upwards into your mind, Hill says it becomes this incredible fuel. It doesn't just go away. It transforms into more imagination, more courage, more persistence. It's like putting rocket fuel in your creative engine.
And this is the big secret, according to Hill. This is how you tap into genius-level thinking. He found that the greatest achievers weren't these cold, passionless people. Quite the opposite. They had incredible drive and passion, but they learned how to channel it into their life's work. They didn't put the fire out, they just pointed the flame. So, let's recap. We have our tools. We've got decision, we've got persistence, the mastermind, and we've got this incredible source of creative energy. But even with all of that, there's one final battle to be won. And this one is fought right between your own ears. It's the battle against our inner ghosts. So I want you to really think about this for a second. What's actually holding you back? If you're brutally honest with yourself, what is it? Hill is very clear on this. He says it's not your lack of money or where you came from or your education. Nope. The final boss, the big one at the end of the level, is one thing: fear. And he doesn't just leave it at that. He gives them names. He calls them the 6 ghosts of fear. You've got the fear of poverty, the fear of criticism, ill health, the fear of losing someone you love, the fear of getting old, and the ultimate fear of death. His theory is that basically every worry, every hesitation, every failure we have can be traced back to one or more of these 6 fears. So where do these ghosts even come from? Well, check this out. It brings us right back to where we started. It all begins with that tiny little seed of indecision. If you let it sit there, it grows into doubt. And if you let indecision and doubt hang out together for too long, they merge and they crystallize into full-blown fear. But here's the secret weapon. Here's the key to winning that final battle. These fears, they're not real. That's why he calls them ghosts. They're just states of mind. They're just thoughts. And if fear is just a thought, well, who's in charge of your thoughts? You are. You might not be able to control the weather or the economy, but you have absolute control over what goes on in your own head. That is your superpower. And that brings us to the final empowering conclusion, the same one from that famous poem. I am the master of my fate, I am the captain of my soul. And why is that true? It's because you are the master of your thoughts. You have the blueprint now. The principles are all laid out, and it all boils down to that very first step we talked about. So, the only question left is, what will you decide?